You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
Going international again. This is a fun series. I've enjoyed traveling around the world, at least virtually, to some degree, talking with wonderful guests, our partners who are serving internationally. Today, we're going to head to the Cayman Islands. This one, I really pushed for us to actually get to go in person, but for some reason, it didn't work out that way.
That's very unfortunate.
That's so sad. We'll need to make arrangements for that.
Yes,
Thanks to Concordia University, Wisconsin for supporting the Coffee Hour. Find out more about Concordia University, Wisconsin at cuw.edu.
Live uncommon.
Maybe we should schedule that visit for like February.
Let's do that.
I think that would be a good idea.
Yes.
Joining us today, the Reverend Dr. Gerald Paul, serving the Lord in the Cayman Islands. Dr. Paul, thanks so much for being our guest today.
Hey, great. Thanks for having me. You're always welcome to come visit. At the moment, the island is still closed to international tourists. However, hopefully it will be open by December. So February is a good time.
Very good.
Sweet.
I'll put that on my calendar.
Yes.
Sounds like a good plan. So, Dr. Paul, tell us about what led up to your service in the Cayman Islands. Tell us about the path to becoming an international servant there.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I usually say the Lord has a sense of humor, I guess. But I just finished my PhD at the beginning of 2020, and I was visiting the seminary in Fort Wayne, and people from Office of International Mission and the region here. We started visiting and talking, and they recruited me, and because they were looking for somebody to serve here because of the situation, and when they found out that I have a South African background, and some of the expat community on the island is South African, so they thought that would be a good fit, and we're looking into maybe starting a preschool here, and my wife Heidi is a preschool teacher, and then COVID hit, and they said, well, the Office of International will not issue any calls to missionaries because of COVID, etc. And so we were happy where we were at in Montana, and it was no problem, and continued to ministry out there. And then we went on vacation in July, and on the way home, got a phone call, we've called you as a missionary to the Cayman Islands. That was a surprise because we didn't expect that at that time. So we had to make a prayerful decision, and the Lord led us to be here. So we had to do our fundraising at the end of last year, and got the green light in December, and moved to the Dominican Republic for 6 weeks or so in January, early February, and then beginning of March, we landed here in the Cayman Islands. That was quite an ordeal because the islands are closed to the outside, and we had to get permission to travel, and yeah. But thankfully, we are here, and to serve the people here with Word and Sacrament and reach out to the people here. Because of COVID, there was not a Lutheran pastor on the island for a whole year. So people are thankful to receive, the Lord again in His Word and Sacraments.
That is quite the journey. You weren't kidding about that.
Yeah, from a mountainous Montana to a very flat island with no mountains at all.
Right. What was that transition like, making that transition to the mission field?
Any move, any transition is stressful. Sure, it is. We had a comfortable life. Thankfully, our kids are grown. So our youngest is now in the fall will be in her last year of college. So, in that sense, it made it a little bit easier. But so we had our own home and everything that we needed. And so we sold most of our stuff and put some of the stuff in storage, and had to transition to a different country and culture, and dealing with things not here now with banking, like today and things like that is, you know, life was so convenient, so easy in the U.S. Here they do things very differently and have much longer processes to go through. So it's an adjustment, but we have lived in different parts of the world before, so it's not new to us. It's just it takes an adjustment, and I guess the older that you get, the longer the adjustment takes. But it's fun. We enjoy it and take it as it comes, and learn through it, and hopefully meet new people in the whole process to enable to share the gospel with them.
So, tell us what you've learned about the community and the culture there. You said things are done differently. Share with us some stories from your 4 months there in the mission field. What you've been learning about the culture, having grown up in South Africa and then and living and serving in Montana. I'm sure there were some cultural differences there. Tell us about
Sure.
the culture that you're living in the Cayman Islands.
Yeah, I think the Cayman Islands is still a British protectorate. So it was a British colony, together with Jamaica, was one colony. In 1971, the British gave them the option to become independent, and Jamaica took it. They became independent, and the Cayman Islands at that time didn't have much of an economy yet. So they decided to remain under the British protection. So there's a very British influence, but also very much Caribbean, Jamaican influence here too, and so there's one side is the British system of doing things and traditions. Like we celebrated the Queen's birthday last week, and with pomp and circumstance and parades, and we were invited to the governor's lawn, and we had some, hors d'oeuvres and drinks there with the governor. So that was, very British thing, to do. How with the closeness to the United States, the U.S. has, cultural influences here too, because everything that is consumed on the island, including building sand, has to be imported. so, so everything that all the consumer goods are imported from the U.S., from Florida. So you get that influence, and tourism was very strong here. With COVID, everything is closed down, and the other half of the economy is financial services. Um, So there are 184 banks registered on the island, with offices here, and the accountancy firms and things like that. So financial services are very strong. So you have a kind of two-tiered culture. One is the local culture, the Caymanian culture, and you have also the expat community from over 100, 130 countries represented on the island. So is a mixture of those two, and you know, in a sense, it's very Western, so it's easy to navigate. The local people, the Caymanians, are extremely friendly, easy to get along with, to talk with, and the expats, it's about half and half of the population on the island. The foreigners that live here, and that's kind of the target community that we want to reach out to. They are more closed in, kind of keeping to their own cultural groups in a sense. So it's kind of hard to get into that, into their closer circles. And they are away from home. They come to the island to have fun, to work hard, of course, during work hours, and then have fun the rest of the time. And being away from home, they, kind of, church is not a big priority, or a religion at all. Whereas the local community, the vast majority of the Caymanians think of themselves as Christians. Um, they all, in the older established communities, there are local churches, mostly some variety of Church of God, or Methodist holiness movements. So They might not attend always regularly, but they consider themselves Christian. But they do kind of carry a heavy burden of law, of moralism, in that from those churches. So I think it's very important to have a Lutheran presence here, the pure gospel, to bring them that freedom of the gospel, the forgiveness in Christ. Christ is for them, and especially those who carry heavy burden. So getting to know the culture, new banks, and we have drive on the left here. So being raised in South Africa, that was an easy readjustment. That's no problem at all. We have, I think, one or a couple of traffic lights on the island. The rest are roundabouts, so you have to keep left on the roundabout to keep the traffic flowing. And it's very British, but units of measurement are kind of American, or imperial. So you have these differing cultures having influence on the island, and your gasoline gas is measured in imperial gallons, like in Britain. However, your milk and water is measured in American gallons. So, so all these quirky things, but that's very interesting. It's wonderful talking points to when you talk to people, how they're adjusting and things like that.
Tell us about the local congregation, the people that you serve in the congregation at Safe Harbor.
Yeah, Safe Harbor Lutheran Church. There's been we are the only Lutheran presence on the island and other islands. Has been here for about 20 years, on and off, and started by faithful Lutherans that wanted to be served by pastors. So it started as with retired pastors coming and having services, especially the high tourist seasons. And then missionaries came. A couple of missionaries came, and then there was a little bit of problem a few years ago, and a group split off and formed their own church, but they are no longer Lutheran. But the faithful core group remained faithful. And the last missionary left 2017, so they haven't had a permanent pastor since then. They were, it was wonderful that faithful retired pastors from the LCMS came to serve for a month or a couple of months at a time. They were grateful to receive the Lord's gifts, but there's no stability, no permanence. They were hesitant to invite people in that sense, although these pastors were faithful. So we hope to bring more sense of stability and permanence to the congregation, and also in order to reach people with the gospel too. And we do not have a worship space, so people can keep that in our prayers so we can find a space. We have a temporary renting a conference room in the Chamber of Commerce on the island here, 3 hours on a Sunday for about $300 a month, Sunday. Before COVID, they gathered in a community center locally. And however, once a month, that community center was pre-booked, so they had to find another place to worship. So they usually gathered here, the house that they're renting for us. And since we came in March, that's where we gathered. Here on the porch, we were a screen-in porch. We had services here on the porch, and however, now that summer, it's extremely uncomfortable. It's hot and humid here. It's 90 degrees and 90% humidity, and so we were renting an air conditioning conference room. But our goal in our prayer is to find a more permanent space, if not, renting a building or a storefront or a place like that. Our ideal, of course, is to buy a piece of land and build to suit, because we do want to start a preschool here, and it would be ideal to have a building built to suit for a preschool and a church. But that might be in the future because property prices are extremely high on the island. Um, I think there is a need for a preschool, and it will help us to make use of the building throughout the week, not just on Sundays. So um, hopefully people can support that too. The need for preschool is there because there's a sense, in a sense, cultural segregation on the island, where the Caymanians, um, they have free schooling. They have public schools, and all their school fees, everything is covered by the government, by taxes. Whereas the expats are not allowed to send their kids to the public school, so they have to find private schools. So there are quite a few good private schools on the island, yes, but there are more children, young children, than there's room in especially preschools. There's long waiting lists, so there's a need for that. And hopefully, the LCMS is well known for their school ministries, and Heidi's a good preschool teacher too, and so we're hoping to start that. But finding an appropriate building or a room large enough to host a preschool is at the moment. We've been looking regularly here these 4 months, and it's either nothing is available, or we can rent 2,000 square foot space downtown for $40 a square foot, which is around $80,000 per month. So I don't think that is that's possible.
Feeling lightheaded just thinking about it. We're talking with Reverend Dr. Gerald Paul, serving the Lord in the Cayman Islands. We have more to learn about the Lord's work in the Cayman Islands in just a moment. You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
You're a miracle. You know that, right? A living, breathing, one-of-a-kind miracle. You were created to stand apart, to share your gifts in the service of others, to make an uncommon impact in a common world. And at Concordia University, it's our mission to help you do that, to live uncommon. To learn more about Concordia, go to cuw.edu.
Welcome back to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
Today we're learning about the Lord's work in the Cayman Islands. We're talking with Reverend Dr. Gerald Paul, who serves the Lord there. Before we went to break, you were talking about the ways that you've been given to serve and the people you get to serve, and what life is like, what island life is like, coming from Montana to island life, and mentioned it was 90 degrees and 90% humidity. Those of us in St. Louis would adapt quite well to that. We're pretty used to that in the summers here, 90 degrees and 90% humidity. That's like a typical July or August day in St. Louis. So we could adapt pretty quickly to that. I think you need a DCE there, right, to do some broadcasting from the ministry there in the Cayman Islands from Safe Harbor. Tell us, you were talking about the wonderful opportunity to serve families, especially those with children. What has it been like in the time, in the 4 months that you've been there, just getting to know the members of the congregation? I know that COVID has presented some challenges in terms of meeting in person and things like that in various parts of the world. What's it been like getting to know the members of the congregation and the community as well?
Yeah, with COVID, it's hard to get onto the island. But once you're on the island, and once we had to do a 14-day quarantine when we landed. But once you release from quarantine, wow, it's open. It's no masks. You can, no restrictions on gatherings or anything. So, we met right away in person, and we've been doing that every Sunday since. And the people appreciate that. So that's been great for us, and getting to know the people, getting to know the members of the congregation here and those who attend, and that they, some of them are local, some of them are from different parts of the world, from Cuba and Honduras and Canada and the United States and South Africa and so yeah, it's been good. We had our first baptism this past Sunday, so thanks be God for that. Um, it's a couple that also grew up in South Africa and had their child baptized, and I was able to speak some Afrikaans with the family too. So that was great. Yeah. Um, but yeah, very interesting history of the people that attend here. Um, uh, yeah, history of the island. One of the members traces his family history back to the early 1700s when his family came from Honduras. Here, he has some native Honduran background, and he married an American gal, and so he became a Lutheran too. And so yeah, it's very very interesting here, and how the people before Castro took over Cuba, how they would travel from the islands to Cuba to find work because there wasn't any work on the islands. Most men left the islands to earn a living on the ocean, fishing or merchant marines and things like that, or went to Cuba to work there. But once Cuba was taken over by the communists, the tourism industry kind of shut down there and opened up opportunities for tourism here. So the people returned back here and brought their families back, and some Lutheran missionaries that worked in Cuba brought the gospel to them too. So they were elated to find a Lutheran church here on the island and joined us. So that was great. And we're looking into reaching out to the Cuban refugee community on the island too. But at the moment, the access is pretty difficult because a couple of weeks ago, some of the Cuban refugees tried to escape the island on a cargo ship. So everything is locked down at the moment. So it's kind of tense. But yeah, that's why we're learning Spanish too. It's 3 days. I have Spanish classes for a couple hours every day. So that's good. It's been going well, and hopefully we can reach them with the gospel too.
How have you seen the Lord providing for your family as well as the people of the Cayman Islands and of Safe Harbor throughout the 4 months that you've been there? But some of those things that you've seen, some of the blessings that maybe have come out of the pandemic and having to maybe change the ways that things are done.
Yeah, the Lord is always faithful. We sometimes have a hard time to see it because we tend to be, fallen, sinful, and selfish human beings. But we time and time again we see how the Lord provides, and we're very thankful for that. And to come here on the island, the people did not have a pastor for a whole year. They were not able to meet in person. They did not have the Lord's Supper for over a year, and then the joy we were received here and were able to give that joy to these people, Jesus Christ, His body and blood given and shed for them, and now that to do that every Sunday, that is great. And so the Lord provides, and He kept these people, this faithful little group, He kept them going. With a promise that things will return again, and the pastor will be here, and now we are here, and the Lord provides for that through His Word and Sacrament, and the Lord provides especially to people back home in the U.S., faithful LCMS members who support our mission with their prayers and with their dollars, and to keep us here because the people here are so small they cannot pay. They provide housing for us, but for us to live here, it's all supported by faithful members of the LCMS that support the mission and ministry here, and we give thanks to God for that. And every time we are in a bind, the Lord helps us out, and we think we are settling, and like our housing situation has. We thought everything is okay, but yesterday the realtor showed up and said the owner of the house that the church is renting, he's putting it on the market. So we might have to look for another place to live. But the Lord will provide at the right time. So maybe the new owner is an investor that lets us live here, continue to live here and rent here, or we find a new place. The congregation did not have a worship space, and the Lord provided with help from the LCMS, so we can rent a conference room to gather in every Sunday morning. And once we grow a little bit larger, hopefully we can find a more permanent space and where we can have weekly meetings or also during the week. So we're all looking into that. And I think, especially my problem is I'm too impatient. It's hard to wait for the Lord, and He reminds me to quite often to wait for Him for the right time, and He will provide. And we ask the people to keep all this in their prayers too, so that the Lord will continue to provide. He is faithful, and we just are here to bring these gifts that the Lord has given us to them and for them.
How can we stay up to date on what's happening with Safe Harbor Lutheran Church and the work the Lord has given you in the Cayman Islands?
Yeah, you can go to the LCMS or the Office of International Mission on the website International Mission and go there, or lcms.org/Gerald.Paul is more information about us. If you want to subscribe to our monthly newsletter, we are sending it out to our supporters, but you're most welcome to subscribe to that, and just send me an email, gerald.paul@lcms.org. I'd love to put you on the list, and so the next newsletter is coming out pretty soon at the end of this month. So, and you'll read all about things happening here, island life, and life in the congregation itself. And then it looks like the government will start opening the island middle September, with the eye of completely opening it for the high season of December, January, and February. So you're all welcome to come visit. We had visitors from Minnesota and North Dakota too. So anyone is welcome here, even Canadians. That's Mission Canadians, because apparently they have grown into one of the largest expat communities on the island. So so if there are any Canadians listening and have family or friends moving or to the island or on the island, tell them about us.
Our guest today, the Reverend Dr. Gerald Paul, serving the Lord in the Cayman Islands. Dr. Paul, thanks so much for being our guest on the Coffee Hour today.
Oh, thanks for having me. Appreciate that. God's blessings to you there.
You're listening to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@KFUO.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.